Welcome to our Partnerships Breakout session focused on DCNR's Statewide and Regional Partnership Grant Program. Thank you for joining us. I'll lead the review of the Partnerships Grant opportunity today. My name is Kelly Rossiter. I'm the Section Chief for the Bureau's Landscapes and Educational Services section, and I also currently manage several partnership grants, so some of you may know me a bit more personally as your DCNR grant manager. I'd like to start with reviewing a quick agenda for our program. I'm going to start by reviewing the Partnerships Grant opportunity and typical projects that are applied for under this grant. And then I will also provide some tips on what makes a great application and wrap up with some reminders and a quick summary. Let's make sure you're in the right place. This breakout session is not for applications that are focused on a very specific playground trail or planning project. This session is focused on projects that advance collaborative multi-municipal or large landscape projects, and those projects should be focused on DCNR's mission of recreation, conservation, and heritage. Applicants here are very similar for all of our application types. You need to be a municipality or an authority that's in a larger multi-municipal partnership, a regional municipal entity, a statewide or regional organization, or a heritage area. The projects supported in partnerships need to fall within one of these four major categories. The first item is convening education and training projects, and those are projects that foster public engagement in our natural and cultural resources through the provision of forms, training, and education. So these are things like conferences or workshops, developing publications, or other direct education and training. We also support special purpose planning projects, which develop strategic plans through public planning processes. These are things like management action plans for a heritage area, economic assessments or maybe marketing plans, preservation plans, special feasibility studies, or maybe creating a branding campaign. We also support implementation projects. These are small projects that come out of previously completed plans. They might be things like small projects that relate to construction, but they also may be a little bit less tangible, like a public outreach program or program facilitation to get a program off the ground. Finally, we also support mini-grant projects. Partners may request mini-grant funding to develop small grant programs that empower the grassroots organizations in their regions. A common element of our partnership grants are mini-grant programs. In this situation, DCNR grants funds to a partner, and that organization supports local projects in their region and local partners in their communities via their own small grant program. DCNR requires that partners offering a mini-grant program follow the framework and requirements in our mini-grant program policy. This slide outlines some of the key points about mini-grant programs if you choose to offer one as part of your application to DCNR. The mini-grant projects that you support in your program should be very small and completed within roughly a year time. The maximum mini grant that you can give out to a partner is $25,000, and the maximum total project cost that you would be supporting with your grant is $50,000. We really want to make these projects small, the kind of projects that might not be appropriate for a larger grant program like our own C2P2 program, but are still very meaningful and impactful to local communities. For these projects, the minimum secured match is 20% of the total project cost. So each individual grant project as part of the mini grant project would have to provide their own match. All of our standard C2P2 policies and requirements apply to mini grants, such as our signage or procurement process, eligible costs, things like that. And as a reminder, we ask that each of the mini grant projects that are completed in the program have a success story summary that is submitted to DCNR when they're closed out. And there is a template for that, but it generally gives an overview of the project to show how the money was spent and what kind of project was completed. Another unique feature of partnership grants and eventually grant-funded projects is the work plan. In the work plan document, and there's a picture of that here, the applicant details the tasks that they are proposing to complete as part of the project and the related costs. So each major task or project within the full grant application needs to be summarized on its own worksheet as a distinct priority. If you are doing 3 or 4 individual distinct projects as part of your partnership application, then you need to have 3 or 4 different worksheets in your work plan. You can have up to 6 priorities or distinct tasks within one application. So think about your top 5 or 6 projects that you'd like to proceed with. And we'd like you to put your projects in order of importance. So the very first priority that you outline would be the most important thing that you really want to get funded. If perhaps there's any kind of funding shortage and we would have to only award you partial funding, we would start to kind of subtract the funding from your last priority and make sure that you are awarded funding for that first priority or 2. The tasks and related budgets should reflect roughly 18 months of activity. So these should be fairly brief projects, not spanning years upon years. There should be a clear start and finish to the project, so there is an actual wrapped up deliverable or tangible item that you can report on that was completed in a specific 18-month period of time. As shown here, in addition to a brief description of the project, you will be asked to provide a brief overview of outputs and outcomes. So the outputs are essentially the deliverables related to the task, the quantifiable items. So for example, you might say that you are providing 5 public bird watching and education events. The outputs are a little bit different than the outcomes. The outcomes are a more qualitative goal. It explains the desired results of the effort or the initiative. So in the example I gave about bird watching events as an output, perhaps your outcome is something like increased environmental stewardship ethic among the local community members to better understand wildlife habitat impacts. So it's the larger goal that you're trying to do these smaller projects to contribute towards. Each page of the work plan also includes a budget for that specific task. Here are a few tips to keep in mind when you're completing the budget portion of the worksheet. So as noted here, all costs must be incurred within the grant period, and they must be related to completing the scope of work. We do have an eligible and ineligible cost policy specific for partnership projects. So if you have any questions about whether your proposed costs will be eligible for our grant program funds or to be paid for with your match, then you can reference that policy. Just a quick reminder that subsistence costs need to be within the Commonwealth policy. They cannot exceed the Commonwealth rates. That includes things like mileage or lodging costs, per diem meal rates, things like that. So make sure if you are providing any of that kind of cost that you look at the Commonwealth subsistence rates. In this example we're using here, we're talking about in-house staff. So if you were to complete this section for your in-house staff, you would first start by briefly describing the task that the individual is completing, and also estimate the number of hours that are going to be dedicated to that task. You would then add that individual staff member's billable rate, and we anticipate that that rate will be different for each person based on their role in the organization or the tasks they're completing. For DCNR purposes, we consider the billable rate to be the employee's salary plus any fringe benefits like healthcare or holiday pay or things like that that you need to pay to basically create that person's compensation package and keep them in your seat. So you include their billable rate, do your math calculations, and also let us know how you are paying for that task or that cost. So is that going to be the DCNR grant funds that you're requesting that will pay for that? Or is that going to be the match that you're putting towards the grant, or maybe some combination thereof? I also just wanted to remind you to double check your calculations as you go through. We do have a lot of formulas built into this program, but every once in a while they get a little fritzy and something goes wrong, and I don't want you to apply for the wrong amount of money or show the wrong figures because of a math calculation error. So make sure you check those. So now that we have explored a couple items that are very specific to the partnership grant program, I wanted to move on to the criteria questions that you are going to be asked on your application. And many of these are the same for all of our types of projects, whether you are applying to us for a partnership grant or whether you're looking to build a trail or do a planning project, you're going to be asked very similar questions. Just a reminder that in all of these cases, our grant program is a competitive program and each and every point is important. You are given a score at the end of this whole process and your application is ranked out with others. So you really want to try to make sure that you are getting every point you can possibly get to move up high on that ranking list. So here's some tips for how you can achieve the most competitive application possible. So first question is, are you ready to go? This is worth 15 points, and it's really making sure that your project is ready to move forward if you were funded. Important here is just that you meet our eligibility requirements. You are a nonprofit, 501c3, registered with the Bureau of Charitable Organizations, or you are a municipality or municipal authority, municipal entity of some kind. You do need to have at least 20% of your total project costs secured in match funds. We prefer 50%, but 20 is the absolute minimum that is required by our programs, by legislation that you have to meet to even consider being funded. And that also goes for many grant programs. Obviously, they would also have a 20% match that would be passed down to your grantees that you're working with. We also have some requirements of existing grantees. So we want to make sure that if you are a current grantee and you're coming back to us for more support, whether it's on the same kind of project or a new initiative or idea, you should really be current on your grant management with DCNR already. So any grants that you have open, any current partnership grants need to be in good standing, not expired. You need to have your work plans filed, your progress reports submitted, and generally be up to date on your grant management to be looked upon favorably for a new grant. So the first question you're asked is about needs, benefits, and urgencies. And this is a big question. It's worth 25 points. So that's a good chunk of your 100-point total. Please keep in mind that the needs, benefits, and urgencies should be addressed for each of your priority tasks. So if you're coming to us with an application with 4 different distinct projects, then you should have needs, benefits, and urgencies discussed with each project. So 4 different projects should have some elements in your narrative. Don't focus on just one project and keep talking about that over and over again. Focus on the items in your specific application rather than just a general overview of your organization or community's needs or how you are working to benefit the community in general with all of your programs. We want to know about these specific initiatives you are asking DCNR to support in this application. So stay focused. If you're an existing partnership grantee and we are already supporting you for this type of work, but you're asking for additional support, then let us know how this new request builds on your current project that you already are funded by DCNR for. Or maybe it's just slightly different. Maybe you're expanding your audience or you've learned some lessons from your first initiative and now you're going to tweak this a little bit. So let us know how that's a little different. Consider including some points like those that are shown here on the slide so we can better understand why your project is important. Is it going to fill a gap or serve a new audience in your community that is not currently available through another organization or through a current project that you're working on? What is the outcome that it will achieve or contribute to? Do you have a big lofty goal that this is chipping away at, basically? Is there perhaps an urgency because you have match funding or a volunteer crew available for a specific period of time and that's going to be lost if it can't be done this next year? Does it maybe address a safety concern or some other really urgent issue that is a public health concern? Our next question in the application is worth 5 points, and it's about climate resiliency and green and sustainable practices. So I did note at the bottom of this slide a website at the DCNR website that you can go to get some tips on how you could incorporate these kind of items into your projects. I also just wanted to share a few ways that our partnership grantees often integrate climate resiliency and green and sustainable practices into their projects that might help you have a more competitive application if any of these apply to your projects. So obviously, any kind of sustainable business practices or operating policies that you have in general as an organization or that you're going to implement as part of your program would be a great way to show that you are committed to green and sustainable practices. Also, if you're using local materials or services, professional services, or other kind of services that are related to your project that you're applying to DCNR for support for, if you have any kind of messaging or education that is going to be part of your program related to climate resiliency or sustainability, that is also a great way to show that you're committed and sharing that out with the public. And then if any of your projects actually include tangible best management practices on the sustainability front, that's great to mention that and highlight that and make sure you tell us that you are including these BMPs. The next question in the application is worth 10 points, and we are asking how your project creates new opportunities that are currently not available or builds upon existing momentum. Here is an area where you may want to explain how your program or even the community or political environment that you're working in has evolved over time. Sometimes partnership projects can be ongoing, right? It's a program that you offer every single year or an initiative that you slowly broaden or tweak to serve different members of the public. So it's hard to tell the difference from one year to the next, what is different about that program. So that's what we're asking you here for in this question. Do you have any metrics or outputs that you're collecting or measuring to help us understand how effective this project or program is? Are there things that you've worked on related to this in the past that you've done with your own funding or other funding from foundations or other government agencies that you can tell us about that would help us understand the foundation you're working from? And how would the new request advance the work? What are you doing slightly differently, or what are you expanding? And that's similar to the last item on the slide here. Is there a new opportunity that has come up recently or a potential partnership that maybe didn't exist that you're really trying to take advantage of to advance this work beyond where you've been before? We ask another question on the application about public involvement. DCNR wants to support projects that are embraced by the local community, and so meaningful public engagement is really important to every project we fund. We encourage you to involve both members of the public and then also stakeholder or partner groups that might be able to help you create a more meaningful program or reach a larger, broader audience that they are engaged with as well. We'd like to understand how you're planning to engage folks before, during, and after the project, and that may look different. You may be doing some kind of personal engagement during the project, but you might be doing a survey to get feedback after the project. There may be different strategies involved, and we'd like to know what you're thinking about doing right now at the beginning of the project to get folks involved. Our most competitive applications really incorporate strategies and best practices that engage diverse audiences and really make people feel welcome. That's sort of the B part of our DEIJB effort, our diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. And perhaps most importantly, the engagement you plan should make sense for your project and make sense for your community. It should not just be an effort to check off a box and kind of say, okay, most people throw things up on social media. I guess I'll go ahead and do that. And, you go through a list. Really think about how you can most effectively reach the group of folks you are trying to reach, and let us know what your thoughts are as how you're going to do that. Another question on the application is worth 15 points and is all about Pennsylvania's statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. The question is not new, but the plan is new. So please make sure you are looking at the current plan. This just came out here in 2025, so it is not the same one you would have been looking at last year if you applied to our program last year. There's a picture of it on the screen, so when you either get online or you get your hands on a physical copy, make sure the title page you're looking at looks like this title page. It is called Outdoor Places, Shared Spaces. That is the new plan we want you to work on for this question. To receive maximum points, you need to explain how your proposal will address 3 action steps that are identified in the plan. So that's 3 total. You do not have to take each work plan priority individually, and let's say you have 3 or 4 work plan items and do 3 actions for each. So you are effectively giving us 9 or 12 or 15 items. We only want 3. So just look across all of your work plan priorities and try to find 3 action steps that are in these SCORP, which is what we call it for short, that really link up most directly with your work. So you don't have to do 3 each, just 3 total. I would really encourage you to choose different work plan priorities to link to the plan. So you're not just linking one item to 3 different action steps, but you're actually linking 3 different work plan priorities to 3 different action steps in the plan as much as you can. See what you can link up and how pervasive and kind of expansive you can show that your priorities link to the plan. And do your best on that to have some diverse items. The clearest format that we have seen typically is just a bulleted kind of list, like list out the action from the plan that you're speaking to, and then tell us how your work plan priority addresses that, or maybe a couple priorities address that. And then go to the next action step and write out what the action step is from the plan and give us a short narrative or some bullet points or something as to how your priorities relate to that, and just kind of do that 3 times. Just as a reminder, the implementation matrix that you'll really want to focus in on, and they have very distinct short actions listed, that starts on page 91 of the plan. So when you get to the plan, flip right to there if you don't have time to read the whole thing, and you'll be able to get into the actions quite quickly. So another question we ask is about operation, maintenance, and stewardship. The question says, please describe your strategy to operate, maintain, and/or provide stewardship of your project. So think about how your scope of work will be sustained over time. I know sometimes this question is difficult if you are not producing a tangible physical item that could be maintained over time. But here we're talking really about how can the project be meaningful and long lasting, when the actual program is over. What are folks taking with them, or how are you remaining in touch with and engaged in the community to make sure that this isn't just kind of a blip on a radar of something someone attended or something someone did, and then it's kind of forgotten into the future. So do you have partner groups or community groups that can help you maintain any facilities or investments that you made, or can help you continue on this kind of project in another way? Does the project cultivate diverse or active executive boards or groups that will help steward these initiatives in the future? So you've kind of given them some tools and taught them to fish, so to speak, and they can carry this on in their own work in the future. If there is a program that DCNR has been funding for several years, and year after year we're supporting that, we would like to see that you are working on becoming self-sustaining or diversifying your support, and that you are finding other partners and other folks that are interested in being part of this program. And then another thing that some partnership applicants are able to show is whether some fees or other committed funding that you've been able to gather can help cover these costs and continue the program in the future. In addition to the statewide outdoor recreation plan, we'd like to make sure that your project is aligned with some of your more local and regional plans, and that you are helping to implement those local goals. So we do ask a question about any kind of plans that your project advances. So we'd like you to provide us up to 3 plans, and please do not include the outdoor rec plan or trail strategic plan, which has its own question, and we already talked about that, and we don't need to continue to dwell on that. We want to talk about more local or regional plans that your project may link to. We'd ask that you highlight any plans that include your kind of project or program as a high priority or an early implementation item. So that really shows that your project is implementing that plan and is important to the local community. We'd also suggest, to get the most points on this question, that you highlight plans that support different priorities in your application. So don't take something like a mini grant program and find 3 plans that support implementation of a mini grant program, but you haven't talked about anything else in your application. We'd like to see that you've touched on a few different priorities when you have these 3 plans available. Some plans that partnership grantees typically use, these are ones you might find some of your work relating to. Obviously, any kind of local government plans. If you have a greenway plan or maybe a park and rec plan, maybe there is a project you're doing that really relates to that. We also have more specific facility-based plan, so a master site development plan for a particular property, or feasibility study for a specific property or engagement activity. We also find folks using plans related to a specific issue or topic, like a climate resiliency plan for the region, or an interpretive plan for a particular historic district or a particular community. And finally, one that is pretty popular that folks can find their work in basically are organization or agency strategic plans, or if you are in a heritage area, geographic area, or a conservation landscape area, those entities also have action plans, management plans that govern, how they're going to engage with the region and what kind of projects are important for that region. So sometimes your work can be found in those kind of more organizational or landscape-based plans. Our program also asks you to explain the partners that are involved in your project. So these are financial partners who are providing funding for your program or project, partners that are providing their own technical expertise or assistance in developing the program or project, and then more general partners that might be helping you engage with certain sections of the community or helping you promote the program or, providing some logistical support or something like that. So we understand that there are many different kinds of partners in your programs, and we want you to be telling us about those that are very integral to the success of your project. So while we love to see that the community supports your project in general and different organizations think it's a great idea, we really want you to focus your efforts to receive the maximum points here on groups that are truly providing some element of your program and that they are committed to helping you with this project, not just thinking it's a great idea. We would like to see information about each one of those partners and also ask you to provide a commitment letter from those partners that identify their contribution to the project or their involvement so we can understand their role. We encourage you to join forces with other organizations too that might have like-minded kind of missions or be working on similar things. I listed a few ideas here, but there are obviously a lot in every community, so they may vary where you're at. But we have larger partnerships like thematic partnerships like the Conservation Landscape Program, heritage areas. Our Rails to Trails conservancies offer a lot of the same benefits to folks across the whole state. And then also the PA Downtown Center is another example of many. All right, we've reached the point of a few final reminders as you're pulling together your grant application. So the first and maybe most important reminder is to start now, start early, submit your application well in advance of the deadline rather than waiting till the very last day. We really encourage you to get moving early. And there's a few things here, like making sure you have your BCO status if you are a nonprofit, that may take a little while. So we want to make sure that you are thinking about that ahead of time. Please remember that for partnership projects, your work should be done within 18 months, preferably. You do have 3 years to work on these grants, but keeping the timeline shorter is preferred. For partnership grant requests, we ask that your request is $300,000 or less, and you do need to provide at least 20% of the total project cost as a secured match that is secured at the time of application. If you are offering a mini grant program, remember that all of the projects that are funded by that program and that come out of that program should be very small and quick accomplishments. These are small projects that really aren't appropriate for our larger grant program, but are really meaningful to the community and help you move your mission forward. And for existing grantees, please make sure you are current on all of your grant requirements for your open partnership grants. So that would be progress reports and work plans submitted as required, and that none of your grants are overdue or expired. And finally, just reminding you that our Bureau of Recreation and Conservation regional staff are here to help you. This map shows all of our regional staff located across the state with their name and contact information. So you can find out generally where you are offering your program or you're doing your project, and you would reach out to the regional staff member that covers that area. In general, I suggest if you are offering a statewide program that you first start with the regional staff member who covers the geographic region where your headquarters are based. And then from there, you can decide if that's the right fit or not, but I'd start with them. Reach out to them early in the process, please. They are helping a lot of applicants, and they are even doing specific site visits in some cases where the projects require it. So their time is really stretched across their large regions. So please reach out to them to talk about your project and ask any questions that you feel maybe weren't covered in this presentation. But I do thank you for the time you've spent here in this presentation and your interest in our grant program. We look forward to seeing your application in April and hopefully working with you in the future. Thank you.